morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are, whenever you're watching this. This is Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be a roundup review of some cool tone palettes that I tried in recent months. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today's video is going to be a roundup review of the cool toned eyeshadow palettes that I've tried in 2022 so far. I've been doing this video, I think, once a year for the past 5 years or so, so I'll make sure to link those videos down below that I've done previously, where I also do a roundup of like cool tone palettes that I've tried that year. I have reviews up with most of these already, and 3 of them that are going to show up in my next 10 palette review. So I always share swatches and things like that in like my review videos. This is sort of like just a roundup to give my thoughts about cool tones and have them all in one place. I just think that's pretty helpful. So yeah, if you want to see swatches and looks and all that, then I'll refer you to those other videos as well and blog posts that I have with these. So let me get to these palettes. But before we do that, let me introduce myself. My name is Maaike. Hi, I live in the Netherlands. I like to come on here to chat about eyeshadow palettes, essence and Catrice reviews, and getting the use out of my makeup. And because I am a snow angel with a fair skin tone with a cool to neutral undertone, I like to skew my makeup preferences are just skewed by that. So that definitely is also going to factor into how I feel about some of the palettes I will be sharing with you today. So yeah, I already mentioned that some of these I have already reviewed for you, and I don't like doubling up too much on content. So I will have all the links in the description box down below to things I already have reviewed. And just know that the 3 palettes I haven't reviewed yet are currently in the review pile, and that review should be up, I think, somewhere towards the end of the month. So it's coming, it's coming. So if you want to see swatches and all that, I've got your back. Don't worry, don't worry. So yeah, the first palette here I wanted to share with you is one from Colourpop. This is the Head Capricorn in Charge, and this is one of their 4-pan eyeshadow palettes. So this was the Zodiac collection, I believe, and I saw Colourpop doing these, and I was like, I want to try some of these, and the Capricorn one was the most cool toned one, so obviously I wanted to try it. This was one of the more successful ones, and the reason why I do really like this, because it's cool tone browns rather than grays. I'm not a huge fan of gray tones, which we will get to in a minute, because there were a lot of gray tones this time around. So this is quite successful for me. The shimmers here at the top look more special to me in a finger swatch than they do when I put them on the eyes. They look like standard shimmers once they go on with a brush. This is really pretty. This is a bit of a warmer undertone, which I don't understand in here. But yeah, these were pretty, very workable eyeshadow. This is one of the favorite ones that I tried from this line. Not just because it's cool tones, because I also felt that this was one of the better quality ones that I got. I also got the Virgo. What was the other one I got? The Taurus and the Cancer. And those were lovely too, but this color story just made the most sense to me, and I know I'll get more use out of this. Let me just get to what I have on my eyes today, and that is this one. This is from Kaleidos. This is the Black Jasmin palette from the Smokey Nostalgia palette, which is why I wanted to film the video today, because I did this look. So I was like, I might as well just film the video then. So this is 4 shades, and it's very gray toned leaning. So I thought going into this that I wasn't going to love this all that much, because when it comes to gray tone palettes with a black, I already have the Colourpop Blowing Smoke. So do I need another one? Possibly not, but I got the entire set, so the Cold Brew is coming up in a minute, because I also got the other palette. And this was sort of like the one where I was like, I'm not entirely sure how often I was going to use this, until I put it on my face, because what I have found is that especially this darker gray tone is more of a blue tone gray. And if we're doing grays, I want them to have like a blue or a green undertone to them, because if they are too ashy, like if they are too heavily gray toned leaning and there's too much black in the shade, I feel it never looks quite right on me. But if there's something blue in it, something just happens with my undertone and I feel it's a lot more flattering. This shimmer is super duper intense and like, all the texture of the world. It seems to have a little bit of a heavier sparkle to it than other shimmers from Kaleidos that I've worked with, but it is really pretty. I do like to use these just dry with a brush and then just tapping a little bit more over it with my eyes, and that way I've experienced no fallout. You do have to be careful that you tap off your brush though with that shimmer. But again, like the matte, it has more of like a blue undertone to it, and what I appreciated in this silver is that it's not too stark. So some silvers have a lot of white running through it, but this silver leans more towards that darker gray shade. Like it's like it almost has this kind of base to it and then just a pop of brightness, and that's what I feel works here really well. It's not too stark, and silvers I feel can be a little bit too stark and too clashing. But this is a really pretty one. I love this as a crease shade for blending things out, and the black is really nicely saturated and works really well as a liner. So yeah, this one was a lovely one. You'll see the swatches and a close-up of the look I'm wearing today in my 10 palette review video at the end of the month. Also included in that 10 palette review video, the Cold Brew, which I knew was going to be a favorite, because if we're doing cool tone browns, I'm here for it. Now, granted, is this as cool toned? I think it still works, but I think if you have a super duper cool undertone, that this can look a little warm toned on you. I'm just warning you. However, if you have warm tones in your skin and you very find that like these gray tones look really ashy and dead on you, then something like this is going to work wonders, because this just makes it a little bit more alive. If you do have a warm, olivey, more neutral undertone, then these browns can work really well. I love how you get a really nice saturated like coffee, that's probably why it's called the Cold Brew, coffee kind of shade. I really like that deep brown shade. An excellent crease shade, and this shimmer is stunning. However, where the silver shimmer in the Black Jasmine isn't too stark of a contrast, I feel that this has a lot more brightness to it, but in this case it worked really well. So very often I don't love these very overly highlightery kind of lids. I just don't love it in a shimmer, but this works really well, and then you just get something to deepen things out with. I feel that this is the most warm toned leaning shade in the palette though. So if you use this, it seems to have a bit of a yellow undertone to it, which is why I'm like asking myself like, how does it go with the rest? I don't really get that lighter shade. However, I just pop that in my crease and it gets covered up for the most part anyways. But I know that if you have a very light pink undertone, that can look too yellow on you for sure. So that's perhaps a shade you have to be careful with. Then a very fragile little palette, and when I reviewed this in March, I got a little bit of flack from some people saying, why are you featuring this palette? But just because the brand is Russian doesn't mean that the brand is going to subscribe to the politics of Russia. I don't know what their stance is on Russian politics, and to be quite frank, I don't really care. I already bought this in August last year, and it didn't come in until November. This was one I had to wait for, which is also why when I got it home, it was a little bit broken. So I have to be very careful with this. Ooh, now it closes. This magnet is super strong and it just keeps crumbling. So I have to be very careful with it. So what am I talking about here? Because this brand hasn't been talked about a lot, because of course nobody can buy this anymore because there's no international shipping at the moment. But this is the Sigil inspired, oh, what's it called? Perky Lavender Chinchilla. My fingers are covered in eyeshadow now. That's what this palette is called. I tried this. If you love cool tones with a pop of purple, this is such a lovely palette. They brought this back due to popular demand. The brand seems to operate in a way where they do some eyeshadow for like just a few months and then it's discontinued. I think they keep their palettes around until stocks last for about 3 months and then they discontinue it. So I was happy that they brought this back because I heard a lot of people raving about it. It's very light, which is the critique that a lot of people had, but that's why I love mine. And these shades are just so gorgeous. Like, oh my word, these swatch well, these go on really, really well with a brush too. They're insanely pigmented, but not in a way that you can't work with it or blend them out anymore if you have a lighter skin tone, for instance. This is such a great palette. You get some really cool shimmers in here. Yeah, this periwinkle purple is great. I know a lot of people want it more in terms of like depth from this palette, but I'm glad that this is so light as it is, because that's why it worked for me and that's why I rate it so highly. But since you can't buy that anymore, and because a lot of people are a little iffy now that that brand, you know, is from a country that is just, I don't know. I don't want to get too political on this channel, but I have found an alternative. Let's segue into this palette with that bridge, because I have found myself using the Makeup by Lisa Raven's Castle palette and thinking, I can get a similar look as I get with the Chinchilla palette from Sigil. So here is what the Raven's Castle palette looks like. I had never heard from this brand before, but this brand I saw Erica Conger use here in a collab with her friend It's Not Your Basic Steph. This is a small UK-based indie brand from the Isle of Wight, and they do some eyeshadow palettes, and I got my hands on this one and I really, really liked it. This also has some really lovely cool tones. There are fewer mattes in here. We really only get 3 mattes. We have this shade, the white, and the black. And everything else has a shimmer to it. Now, in the Chinchilla palette, all the shimmers have like a similar level of shimmer, I find. Whereas in here, we also get some more like sparkly shades, but without them being glittery, which I love. So a little bit more texture. We also get 9 shades, of course. This does have a deepening up shade in terms of the black. And I did find that this crease shade was a little darker once I started blending it out on my skin tone than it looks in the pan. It looks lighter in the pan than the way it applies to my lids, I found, but we have a matte white, so I just blended some of the white over it just to tone it down a notch, and it worked perfectly. These two pulled a little bit more grain tone than I had expected. I thought this was going to be more of a taupe, but it doesn't have enough brown for it to really show up taupe. It just shows up like a darker silver shade, but I didn't mind it at all because it was very pretty. But where the power of this palette lies is in the purpley pinks. The purpley pinks in here are so, so stunning. It gives this palette a whimsical quality to it that a lot of cool tone palettes lack. So I feel that if you missed out on the Chinchilla palette, it was something you were lusting after, or maybe you just have a fair skin tone and you really like cool tones, then this is a really great cool tone palettes. And the fact that they're based in the UK makes it so much easier to buy if you are in the EU or in the UK. I think these are great. So this is definitely a palette that I feel is just going under the radar, and I feel we need to hype it up a little bit more. Another palette that's a little fragile and I have to be very careful with, but I can only show you the outside packaging anyways, because I took all of the shades out of the Colourpop Off Quartz. So I tried this palette earlier in the year. I'll pop a picture of the color story up here in case you're interested in what it looks like. And I bought it together with the Tinkerbell palette, and what I actually did is that I took the shades from this palette that I did like and fused it together with the Tinkerbell palette, because each of the palettes had shades I liked and then shades I didn't like, and Colourpop palettes are magnetized. So what's actually in here, and that's why it's fragile, is some repressed Juvia's Place shadows from the Masquerade and Magic palettes, and this matte, ever since I repressed it, has just been cracking and it's a bit messy, so it's going all over the place. So that's why I have to be very careful with how much I tip this forward. But yeah, this is a homemade color story. You can't buy this palette as is. That's not what this looks like. But the Off Quartz and the Tinkerbell palettes collectively have made me sort of not want to try any more Colourpop shadow, you could say. So if I were to recommend anything from Colourpop, it's not going to be this. This is one of my least favorite cool tone palettes that I've tried in recent years. And it's not because of the color story. The colors are stunning. It's a great taupey gray leaning color story, so I loved it for that. I love the look that I came up with when I did this, when I used this palette. But for me, the formula was just very thin and just not that great. Like, it built up, but it just took like 10 layers to build up a crease shade, and I'm like, I don't have time for it. So I just feel that Colourpop has changed their formula, and it's not for the better. So this is the Colourpop palettes with like the larger size pans. If you get the Colourpop palettes with the smaller size round pans, those are much better, I feel, than these larger pans. Granted, these are the only two palettes in this format that I have tried, but I wasn't a huge fan. I thought some of the shimmers were incredibly difficult to build up. They needed like 4 layers and it still wasn't there. Some of the shades were very sheer to begin with. I'm not sure what route Colourpop is taking, and it's just made me kind of apprehensive to shell out the kind of money I need to shell out to get myself some Colourpop. Because I live in the Netherlands, it is quite expensive for me to buy because of all the shipping and handling fees that are added on top of the price point. So whenever I buy Colourpop, I wait for a sale, I have enough on my wish list to get free international shipping at the least. Like I usually place an order somewhere between $80 and $100. And then even with like the sale discount and the shipping and handling fees, I end up paying roughly the same amount, I feel. So the off quartz from Colourpop looked a lot better in the pan than I felt I had as a user experience. And then an eyeshadow palette that I was like, oh yeah, I should include it here as well. The Smokey palette that I tried from Rimmel hearts me. So Rimmel is a German-based drugstore brand. These palettes retail for €4. And you get like what? 18 shades? No, more. 18. 6 times 3. It's 18. I can still do math. Very proud of myself. And of the 2 palettes I had, I thought the Jungle was going to be my favorite, but I think I like this one a little bit better. It is a little samey though, so that's one of the reasons why I like, yeah, I've tried it, I liked it. I did like 1 or 2 looks with it. It has a very soft formula though. It's so soft that it kind of blends away into nothing. Like if you're familiar with like older Catrice eyeshadow palettes, like I think they still do some of them, like with the rectangular pans. Oh boy, that just blended away into nothing. And I feel that this is a similar kind of quality where it's workable eyeshadow, but in terms to get it to work, you do have to put in a little bit more effort than with a lot of the things I'm showing you today. So yeah, I did really appreciate how this color story came together though, because we do have these like steely blues that were really stunning. I just didn't really have a very good crease shade in here. Like this was too light, and a lot of it has this like satiny shimmer to it. Now I don't mind going in with a satin in the crease, I really don't. I know some people dislike that, but it's either this or this, and there's no in between. So for me, it wasn't perfect because it didn't have a really good crease shade, but I did really like some of the shimmers that are in here. Like this darker gray was absolutely stunning. It has a bit of a blue undertone, and I love a blue toned gray. Like if I go gray, that's why I like the Kaleidos palette so much as well, because it has that blue undertone. Give me a blue tone gray and I'll love it. But if it's like this very silvery, like this kind of gray, I don't love it. So yeah. This corner of the palette, very successful, but here I felt it was just a little lackluster and it started to just not have the shades I wanted. But for how affordable this is, I thought it was a very good eyeshadow palette for how much you would have to pay for this. So I'm really glad I got to try it. If you are in Germany, or if you can buy this brand and you're looking for very cheap, cheerful cool tones, then this can give you a lot for not a lot of money. Maybe you only pull 1 or 2 looks out of it every day on a day-to-day basis, but that could be a good cool toned look for sure. I just wish it had a better crease shade. And finally, Blend Bunny Cosmetics, the Dollhouse. So this was in my most recent 10 palette review video. I wanted to make sure I tried this before this month so I could tell you a little bit more about it. Now this palette, I have to say, looked more cool toned to me in pictures than it does now that I've tried it and once I got it home in real life. When I got it home, it was really only this row that looked more warm toned, but now that I've tried it, I feel that also here in this pink row, we get quite a lot of warm tones. These greens and golds are quite warm toned. This like brown row is quite cool toned, so the only cool tones we really get is this. And what we're lacking is cool tone shimmers, because we get a blue. But even like this pink has a gold flip to it, making it not that cool toned. So this palette could have been a lot more cool toned than it was. But in terms of like a neutral palette, I think it can work. It's got some fun pops of color that as well. It just has a lot going for it. The only problem here, where the Rimmel didn't have a good enough crease shade because it was too light, this doesn't have a good enough crease shade because it is too dark. This mid-toned row was a little bit too deep for my fair skin. This just all look the same because this is essentially like, what, 6 dark shades, and you really can't tell a difference. Maybe the only thing that kind of stands out is this like plum. But then if you compare it to this darker purple, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So on me, not all of these shades worked really well. Again, was I able to pull some really stunning looks out of this? Yes, but what it needs is a good enough crease shade. Like if this had been a hair lighter, can I lighten it by using the shade right above it? Yeah, sure. Like I mixed these together and it worked a lot better. But I just need something that's right in between. Like I need a row in between this for it to work as a crease shade on me. So this was a little bit too deep. This worked really well, but was a little too light. And the shimmers just didn't give me the options I wanted to go with some of the other shades. So I feel the blue should have been a taupe. The blue should have been a taupe, would have worked a lot better. And then if one of these two pinks could have been like a lilac, I would have liked it a lot better. So put the white over here, a taupe shimmer here, make this a lilac, and then this pink shade can stay. And then I would have liked this just so much more than I ended up liking it. Will I be going back to this? Will I use it again? I think so, because the formula is just amazing. I really like the concept of this gradient. And then, you know, the shimmers in here are really good quality. But yeah, Blend Bunny Cosmetics does some really cool things, and I really like what they're doing. It's just that I felt this palette wasn't as cool toned as a lot of people made it out to be. And the way this was like promoted online and the way the pictures looked, I just didn't think it really, yeah, no. Yes, it has some stunning shades, but it's not as cool toned. So that's it, there you have it. Those were the cool tone palettes that I've tried in recent months that I wanted to update you on how I feel about them. Let me know in a comment down below what are some good cool tone palettes that you've tried so far. Remember, I will have lots of links in the description box to help you out to find all of the swatches and reviews that I've done with these so far, and also my previous videos if you want more cool tone palette recommendations. And for now, we're still in the midst of eyeshadow palette month, so definitely check out my other videos. I will have my eyeshadow palette collection going live towards the end of the month, and I'm running a giveaway, so I'll pop that link down in the description box down as well. So I hope you would like to stay tuned for all of that goodness, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!